This is your city. This is your city wants to know. We want to know the background, the heartbeat of what makes up our beautiful cities. We dig into the backstories from the struggles to the successes of our local entrepreneurs, small business owners, artists, not-for-profit organizations, and the many, many people who make up the intricate tapestry of our communities. Real people, real stories, by you and for you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of This is Your City. I am Kim, your host, and as always, we have another great episode for you. I find sometimes when I say that, I sound like, what's his name from Family Feud? What's his name? You know the guy from Family Feud? He always says, we got another good one here for you, folks, because I'm always saying that, because it's true.
Well, if it's true, then it's all good.
Right? But yes, we have another awesome guest here with you tonight, and I'm going to introduce Amanda, but I just want to give you a little bit about her background. She has such an amazing story, and that's what I love so much about this podcast, just hearing people's real life stories. You know, sometimes we think it's just made for TV or something we read in a book, a fiction book, but real people, real lives go through these things. And Amanda, she's one of these amazing stories, these amazing, resilient women. She was raised by circus parents. So right away, that piques my interest. And her parents joined a cult. So therefore, that means Amanda was raised in a cult. And she's also a survivor of sex trafficking. Now, it was interesting to me when she told me about the cult that she was raised in. The acronym is IBLP, and I've never really heard about it. And it's Institute in Basic Life Principles, and it's a non-denominational religious organization. Oh, I love the dogs. That's what you get when you do Zoom stuff. But so this Institute in Basic Life Principle religion, you know, I did a little bit of research on it, and I've never seen the show personally, but I know many of my listeners probably have. And it's the same religion that I hope I get this right, the Duggars. They're an eccentric reality TV family. And so the Duggars, Living Life with Duggars or something like this, is the same kind of, have I got that right, Amanda?
It's Duggars, and it's
Duggars.
19, I think it's 19 and counting. And then their children have another show called Counting On.
Oh my goodness. I've never seen one of them. I've seen the ads for them and stuff. So it's the same religion as that. And so Amanda Catarzi, did I pronounce that right?
Close enough. Catarzi.
Catarzi. How do you pronounce it?
Catarzi, like a guitar. Catarzi.
Catarzi, I like it. Amanda, thank you and welcome to the show. You have an amazing story to tell us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Love it. So I really want to go back in time. At first, that piqued my interest that you had a family that was a circus family.
Yeah.
That interests me a lot. So were you born into the circus?
Yes and no. So my great-grandmother and her family were brought from Italy straight to Sarasota, Florida, which is where I am now. Was the winter quarters for the Ringling Brothers Circus. So the Ringling Brothers brought them here. And then my parents met in high school in the circus. So mom, the story goes, dad was on the tightrope high above and mom was across the ring. She did, what's that called, with the rope, and it's called web, and you like fall down it and then you climb back up and you fall down it. Well, he saw her and he was an absolute head over heels in love with her instantly. So they actually wanted a completely different lifestyle for my brother and I, because it was a hard lifestyle. Their parents, did the best they could, but it's always a goal to do better than what your parents did. And so that was their goal, and kind of how they got caught up into ATI IBLP.
Interesting. So it's not just a circus life. Like, my phone is ringing over here and I have it off, so I don't know why it's ringing. I'm sorry. But the Ringling Brothers, everybody knows about the Ringling Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of interesting. And they fell in love. So you were basically born into this religious cult because they fell in love and they joined this. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it was their goal to give us a completely different lifestyle than what they experienced. Because it was like drug, sex, rock and roll, kind of gypsy-ish kind of lifestyle. So they wanted something different. And this cult slash organization offered homeschooling curriculum, which wasn't super popular 30 years ago to homeschool your children. There were very limited resources. So that was like a done deal for them. Somebody was, giving them a blueprint on how to raise your children in a godly way. And they were all for it. So their intentions were the very best, but they were afraid. And love and fear are opposites. So when you act in fear over something you love, you're going to create dysfunction. And that's exactly what happened, unfortunately.
When did you or did your parents decide that, okay, there's something wrong with this? Were you at age to do that, or was that your parents?
I kind of did that. I just didn't submit very well. Being a spunky little Italian firecracker, the culture that they were trying to groom me into, the cult was trying to groom me into, just was so abrasive to my personality. So they adhere to old school, biblical kind of ideas, but they take it to an extreme, and they have a military, which gives it the culty feel. And so they just wanted me to keep my mouth shut, head down, have a bright countenance, and be a fantastic homemaker. I mean, the goal is to populate the earth. So have many babies as absolutely possible. So that's what I knew my life was going to be. So I was preparing for that, and I tried my very best because I was a people pleaser. So I tried my very, very best to fit into this world. And obviously there are very ultra conservative ideas. So no cutting your hair, no makeup, obviously no tattoos, no pants. I was only allowed to wear dresses, nothing on your shirt because it would cause men to stumble around you. And by the time I turned 13, I was considered an adult. So I was allowed to be courted by older men. And even our books groomed us for pedophilia and for that kind of situation. So our children's books that I read, the Elsie Dinsmore books. And in the book, the daughter is raised by an extremely controlling father, and she eventually marries her father's friend.
Oh my gosh. These are books we gave you as children?
Yeah, they're called the Elsie Dinsmore series. And they're intense.
Oh.
Yep.
As a woman, did you find it, as a young girl, do you find it was harder for you guys than the boys, or was it also difficult for them?
Well, I mean, I can't assume. I'm sure if there wasn't a boy who adhered to masculinity, if they perhaps were more feminine, they definitely would not fit into that culture. So, I mean, like anything outside of traditional values was a sin. You're going to hell and needed to be fixed or rehabilitated. So even I was sent to Indianapolis Training Center to be slightly rehabilitated, and that didn't work. And when that didn't work and they sent me home, that kind of started us kind of exiting, because we're entering that age to where we're about to graduate high school. So we're kind of done with the curriculum. And I think my parents just wanted to have a beer and chill out. So I think we just kind of started to make our exit then.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So when you were 13, okay, you said that they groom you for older men, but did that happen to you at 13?
Oh yeah. I mean, I always was looking for a man who was established, had money, had house, had a good job, so that I could marry him, have his babies, and stay home and take care of the babies and cook and clean. That was, I mean, I remember going to a friend's place and they had 13 children. And the goal was to see if there was one that would be interested in me. And so I stayed there for a while, like cleaning and cooking, which there are tons of children, and I was not happy about it. I did not have a bright countenance or a pleasant countenance. And they saw the rebellious spirit in my eyes. And I think I talked back a couple times. So it was not a good fit.
It's almost like an arranged marriage in a sense.
Yeah, your father would have to approve, and you're never allowed to be alone with that person. The first time you kiss should be at the altar. Obviously, you have no idea what sex is. You just know you're supposed to create babies somehow.
That's incredible. So you're out of that. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that. And what hurts my heart really, I was reading a little bit about this, and in some clips that I was reading, oh, hurts my heart. They were actually calling it a Christian religion, and that I just wanted to scream out,
Yeah.
no, 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 it's not. So yeah, that is not a Christian religion for any of my viewers out there.
It's definitely, it's a manipulation of Christian beliefs.
Yes, yes. So I just want to put that out there because I did read, some of them are going to go, oh, I'm going to go look this up, the IBLP.
Yeah.
It's not a Christian, it's not Christian. So just want to get that out of there. But I'm really glad your parents wanted to go have a beer.
Me too. Me too. Yeah. So about like 15, I graduated high school and went to community college. So that was my first experience in public school systems. There were boys talking to me, which was unheard of. You know, I was allowed to wear pants because I was standing out like a sore thumb. So my parents were like, okay, as long as they're not too tight, or okay. And then, you know, we started relaxing all this stuff. I remember listening to Good Charlotte for the first time. My mind was blown. So there was this, you know, breaking down, but unfortunately, a lot of the damage was already done because I was in my formative years, I was consuming that doctrine. So it really shaped my ideas surrounding healthy relationships, having my own voice, having my own opinions and beliefs. Modesty, even like it took a long time for me to unlearn that being beautiful or being sexy even was evil. It took me a long time to unlearn, and I still struggle with that even now. So really set me up for failure.
Well, yeah, and I'm thinking if you're in college and you're in like a co-ed college, you've got boys looking at you and you're a beautiful woman. So the attention would have been different than you're used to. And so there must have been an internal struggle, part of you being the feminine part, right? Saying, oh, wow, this is nice. And then the other part going, oh my gosh, I'm going to go to hell. Like there must have been this complete struggle within you.
And there was a constant conflict. I feel like that's been a true consistent feature of my life because we're in this conservative cult, but when we go over to Nona's house, everyone's drinking and cussing and being highly toxic, but completely on the other side of things. So there was always this constant contradiction happening throughout my life. And I think that created a lot of, I don't know, it just brought me out of a lot of alignment, I think, with my beliefs and knowing myself.
Oh yeah, finding out who am I? And that can take you down a tricky road. That can take you down rabbit holes when you're coming out of something where you have been so shadowed and, you know, there's just no inclusion really. You're in this little bubble. So finding out who you are would have been a rabbit hole, I would think.
Yeah, it was a tough process. So my way of rebelling against my parents was going to the most charismatic Pentecostal ministry school I could find in California, you know, modern day Sodom and Gomorrah. So that was my way of rebelling. And I did that. I packed up and left at 20 and went there, and they were not too happy about it. But it was a really cool time because it gave me an opportunity to start investigating all that in a relatively safe environment.
Right.
So I remember walking into a grocery store and having a panic attack because I didn't know what to buy because I didn't know what I liked.
Right.
Like I had no idea.
And you were 20?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. There's so much to think about. There's so much that we take for granted. And you're in a grocery store and you're overwhelmed because it's for you. You're doing it for yourself, right? Before it would have been, were you allowed in the grocery stores, or was that like?
Oh yeah, I just wasn't given the option to make those decisions ever and to have an opinion ever. I was there to always serve. So my opinion never mattered. So just get rid of your opinion. and
Yeah.
cater to everybody else. Like they created a chronic people pleaser.
Mm. Codependent too, maybe a little?
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm thinking like, ooh, that would come with that.
You can tick all the boxes. Whatever you're thinking, yes, that's what happened.
Wow. So what happened after the grocery store? Like, what kind of talk did you have with yourself?
I mean, I didn't have the emotional intelligence to understand anything that I was experiencing. Because I was also molested by a neighbor as a child. So there had been some sexual abuse that had happened there that already started the shame and guilt cycle and the self-hatred cycle. But I was really good at disassociating by that point, even though I had no idea what that was. So I would just turn off my emotions completely and be stoic, or I would engage in fighting. I would go on the attack. So those were my go-tos, and I created quite a bit of messes because then people thought I was bipolar because I have no emotion or extreme rage.
Right.
And there was no real in between. So I unfortunately created a lot of hurt and mess.
But really, it's psychology 101 that would happen with the way you were raised. I mean, it's just, there's no way that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
everything inside. So now you're 20. You're in a very charismatic Christian environment, a little bit of stability, a little bit of safeness. Where did the sex trafficking come in?
Well, so I did all 3 years of ministry school. I graduated. I actually started working for this massive media company that went along with the church and helping them run everything. And then I started gaining all this weight. And I'm like, man, I need to go work out. So down the road was an MMA gym. And I had like messed around with karate a million years ago, once or twice, and I was pretty good at it. So I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. Like I know that stuff. That's not too far of a stretch. And so I started going there and I was really good at it. And all these interesting individuals are participants of MMA, and they tend to be really toxic people. Not all the time, but it does tend to bring a lot of angry people around. And it was the first time I'd ever seen men, women just openly express their emotions. And I thought it was amazing. Obviously, it was highly toxic and dysfunctional, but it was the most amazing thing. I'd never heard anybody talk like that before. And so I started sharing all of my stuff without any boundaries or anything. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know anything. I'm completely naive and broken, and come take advantage of me.
Well, it's like these big flashing red
Yeah.
lights above
Yeah.
your head.
Oh, totally. And so one of the people involved in all that was a predator, saw how desperate I was and how stupid I was, and took advantage of it. So I started dating him, or so I thought. And, one thing led to another, and he's using abusive tactics, mind control tactics, codependency, isolation to really manipulate me into these very dangerous situations, and also labor traffic me. So he was taking me to different fights on different Native American reservations to fight for him and collecting the money. And I never saw a dime of that, of course. So that's how it happened. And everybody thinks it's like some massive, huge moment. Like you get kidnapped, like in the movie Taken, or, you are a druggie and that's why you end up doing it. It's like, no, it's only a couple steps. It's very subtle. And actually lots of people are being sex trafficked. They don't even know it through online resources.
Yeah.
It started with, hey, like my friend really thinks you're hot. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like, why would you tell me that? And it really turns me on when you flirt with him. Again, that's weird, but okay. And we just start breaking down. And then of course, I resisted. So there was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of beatings, a lot of starvings, a lot of rapes, and all that together, you got sex trafficking.
Yeah. So the guy who was grooming you, was also raping you.
Oh yeah. He was extremely violent when he drank, extremely, and he would get blackout drunk. So then, the next morning, of course, conveniently, he has no memory of what happened, but I do,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I was a fighter, so I wasn't allowed to partake in any drugs to numb out. Thank God, because I don't know how my story would have ended. But the bad side is I was conscious and aware for every single event.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yep.
Wow. So you were an MMA fighter?
Mhm.
Wow, that's crazy. That's amazing.
115. I fought at 115. I'm not 115 anymore, but I was in my 20s.
Wow, that's awesome. But so you'd go to these places, and in my head, I'm just picturing, like, because I only have TV to go by, I suppose,
Sure.
like these underground fights that are
Like
happening.
Fight Club.
Yeah, like Fight Club. But because he's training you to,
Mhm,
well, it turns me on when you flirt with these people.
mhm,
You really want to please him because
mhm.
even though he's abusing you, you've got this codependent kind of relationship going on, right? You feel like you owe him, you feel like you love him, he must love you, because you don't really know much about anything when it comes to relationships.
No, and he
Right.
knew that. And he would always tell me, if I question him, this is how adults do relationships. I know you don't know because the way you were brought up. So don't
Right.
be stupid. Listen to me. I'm going to tell you, this is how we do this. Oh,
And because you were brought up in such a strict environment with men and women, what your roles were, this
mhm,
kind of played in a little bit because he used that masculinity, he used that men are to be served,
mhm,
right? So he
mhm.
still kind of used that. That's quite interesting.
Oh
If
yeah,
he
that
used it,
dynamic definitely played out. Like so in ATI, we were taught that you never say no to your husband, no matter what, no
right,
matter how you feel, no matter whether you want sex or not, like you always have sex, and that birth control is murdering babies. So you don't do that either. So obviously we were having sex and I was being forced to have sex with other people unprotected. And so then there was also a conflict happening in me because I'm terrified of getting pregnant, which he was trying to do because he knew that as a Native American, if we had children together, you cannot take the child away from their Native American parent. There's a law that states to protect, what has happened in the past. And so
right,
he knew that, and he knew I'd never leave my child with
right.
him ever. So it would lock me in. So I'd be running to CVS every other day getting a Plan B pill, which created so much more guilt, shame, self-hatred in me. So when he beat me, of course I deserved it because I just killed my baby.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, I needed lots of therapy after this.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering, like, were there times in your life during all of this that you thought you were just going to end it and get out of it?
No, because I had invested far too much. And I think that's a lot of people don't realize that when women are being sex trafficked, it's not just an easy walk away. It's not an easy just yes. Go ahead.
No, I don't mean like get out of it, like leave the relationship. I mean leave, like end your life. Because
Oh,
there's so much turmoil happening.
when I was younger, I thought about suicide quite a bit. I've always been a depressed person. Like I've just been wired that way. I'm one of those people, my chemicals don't work right. So I remember always asking God to take my life, but it was never an option because I had to serve, right? I was on the earth to serve and to do something for God. So that was never an option, though it was a constant thought in my head, and like one of the few thoughts that brought me peace. And so now I did try to kill myself, and that's kind of like how I got out and escaped him, as I did kill myself, and they resuscitated me somehow. I don't really remember any of it. I just know that I was dead and that I wasn't. So and
Oh,
that's still, I mean, I still struggle with that. I'll be straight up, like suicidal ideation when I'm in a bad place brings me a lot of peace.
yeah.
And that's scary, right? That's not healthy. And as soon as that happens, I'm like, oh, I have fail safes in place in my life to protect me and protect the ones I love. So, but yeah, that's definitely a constant factor.
And so well, that's what got you out of it, because that was going to be my next question. I mean, this is a lifestyle, like I said, that people most often only see on TV or read in a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going to the Native American reserves, you're being, groomed out, saying this is normal. You never say no to your man, even though you're not married to him. You were raised in a place where you just never say no.
Mm-hmm.
And this is happening. You're being beaten. I can't even imagine, raped. I mean, starved. Here, you don't listen to me. You don't get to eat.
Yep.
So go bring some money in.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you find the strength, and how did you get out?
I didn't find the strength. I was sent to see a John whose fight name was Shameless, which is kind of ironic. So I usually, like most of these guys were in the fighting world. So we'd go, I'd spar, I'd fight them, like full contact sparring. So if you think a 115-pound girl fighting a full grown man, it's a pretty tough fight. And then they would rape me. So I went and fought Shameless, and I actually ended up knocking him out because I didn't want to have sex. I was tired. I did not want to be raped. And I'm like, you know what, whatever the consequences are, I'm kind of like done. Not doing it tonight, and I'll deal with the consequences later. I don't know what got into me. And I was in my truck leaving the gym, and there was like a 3-way stop. And there was a light there, and there was a cop behind me, and I got the green light. So I started turning, and a girl ran the light and T-boned me and totaled my truck, and knocked me out. That's the only time I've ever been knocked out, is by a Canadian in a Cadillac. And so this, I come to, and this cop standing there with my door open, he goes, "Oh my God, I thought you were dead." Like, that was the first thing he said to me. He's like, "Totally thought you were dead." I'm like, well, no, I'm still here. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I had severe brain trauma, because I was so used to concussions and having concussions every weekend, that it was normal for me to feel concussed. And so I got out of the car, my truck's totaled. It's like, I'm totally out of it. I text my trafficker and say, "Hey, I almost just died in a car accident." And he texts back and says, "Is your face effed up?" I mean, he didn't say effed up, but
Yeah.
the real word. And I said, "No, like, my face is fine." And he goes, "Oh, good, you're still fuckable then." And I was like, and it wasn't like, "Oh my God, I'm being sex trafficked, I'm in a dysfunctional abusive relationship." It was like, something's wrong. No shit, right? This isn't who I am. This isn't who I want to be. I need to do something. Those were the only thoughts. And I was very aware that I had a really small window in time to act on those things before I got sucked back in. So he wouldn't come pick me up. And so I called Shameless to come get me. And he got me and took me back to my apartment, which my trafficker, paid for, of course. He paid for everything. And I bought a plane ticket, and then I committed suicide. And then I woke up to him pumping my stomach and resuscitating me somehow.
Shameless was
No, my trafficker found me and was doing that. And I don't really, because I don't really know. I don't even remember. I don't really know how this all goes together. I just remember when I died or whatever happened, it was like, when you go to the bottom of the ocean and it's just like muted and quiet and peaceful, that's how whether it was death or not, I experienced felt like.
right.
And then I got pulled out of it. He was really mad at me, but he left because his other baby mama was causing drama. And so I went and got a pit bull because that was the next best thing to do. I figured if I got a puppy, I wouldn't kill myself again. And so she's actually in the corner. That's the one you heard barking earlier. And yeah, I bought a plane ticket and I left the next day. And I left everything. I had an apartment, I had my truck, I had all my belongings. I'd been there for 5 years, and I left everything, and just booked it.
Where did you go?
Back to Florida.
With your
Back
parents?
to my parents' house. Which was, God bless them, because I came home raging PTSD, obviously a ton of trauma, not even sure what was wrong with me, not even sure what had just happened. And I was just rageaholic, absolute rage. And they just kind of let me be and just love me conditionally, dinner's ready, come when you're ready, like just allowed me to have my space, even though they had no idea what was wrong with me. And I was horrible.
Did they know what was happening to you for those 5 years?
No, not at that point. No. Yeah. They just knew I was horrible and I was really mean. I got a pretty quick reputation of being super, super mean. And they're like, Manda's back and she's really angry. We don't know why. So yeah.
Wow. And so they let you sort of give you some space to let you heal a little bit, but you can't heal for something like that on your own. I don't believe. Anyway, that's so much internal trauma and mental trauma. What happened? How did you get help? How did you?
I just started pursuing, I knew something was wrong with me, and I knew to a degree that I was in an abusive relationship. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to start Googling everything about overcoming or life after an abusive relationship and self-improvement podcasts and books. And because therapy was never something that was ever an option for any of my family. I mean, you'd go to like your pastor, which I love pastors, but enough of Christian counselors who pretend to be certified therapists, like so much damage happens there. Like I was told by a Christian counselor that my parents didn't want me, and that's why I experienced rage all the time. And it's like, what? Like, where did you even get that? So please go see a real therapist. They can be Christian, but please go see a certified therapist.
Yeah, pastors mean well, but they're not therapists. They're not therapists. They can help in little things here, but not with that much trauma. No.
Yeah, and so I started listening to the two things I could really swallow at that point were Ed Milet's podcast and Andy Frisella's podcast. Those were the only two things that I could receive in me. And so I just binged their podcast, everything they put out, and also reading books and blogs and whatnot. And then I felt like I was good. So I started applying for jobs to help women because I'm like, oh, I can help women now. I'm good. And I ended up applying for this. Little did I know, it was an anti-sex trafficking organization in my city. And they hired me for some reason. And I was the intake counselor. So I would read the women's applications to come into the safe housing there and into the program. And I remember one day I'm sitting there reading this application. So it's like maybe a year later after I've gotten back, maybe 8 months. And I'm like, oh my, she was literally being forced to fight, being raped by other men. And I was reading this and I'm like, oh my God, this is what happened to me.
Yeah.
And like, I was sex trafficked. What? And then I went to my boss. I'm like, hey, I have something to talk to you about. This is what happened to me, like literally this woman's story. And they were like, oh my gosh. So then they started putting me into the same intensive therapy that all of our clients had for free, just put me in it. And one of the best rapid resolution PTSD trauma therapists in the country. And so, yeah, that's how I got help.
And so when you got on and you started applying and you got hired, they didn't know your history yet?
I didn't even know my history. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't even.
Yeah, no. They had no idea.
It's
I had social work experience. Before I started working for the church, I worked with adults with disabilities and provided 2 years of social work there. So I had a social work experience, and that's why they hired me.
Okay. It's so interesting how our minds, how we can.
Yep.
Like I didn't even know what was wrong with me. I didn't know I was sex trafficked. And, some people could be like, how did you not know? But we can never judge that when you're raised a certain way, right? Like, you just don't know if you're into these bubbles. Nobody can judge you for that bubble that you were in. You just sometimes just don't know.
Yeah, my normal is my normal, and your normal is completely different. And they might be extremely dysfunctional. They might be really healthy, but that was my normal. So I didn't know any better.
I want to go back just for a second because it just won't leave my mind. So when you used to fight these people, like let's say shameless, and then they would rape you, was there something in the fighting that turned them on? That was the whole plan. That was the whole deal. Go fight these men, and then they're just going to have their way with you.
Yeah. And the majority of the fights, like I was fighting men. I very rarely fought women because there's just not very many women fighters at 115 fighting. So I was always fighting these men, and they would dress me up in little slutty outfits, and they would, most of the time they beat the crap out of me. But sometimes I was pretty good. So when I did fight women, I was knocking people out left and right. Those were for the money fights.
Right.
So if we wanted to make money, I was against a woman, and I can't recall losing. I probably did at some point. I just can't remember because I've had a lot of things happen to my head since then. Yeah. And then for the sex trafficking part, I was like, that was sometimes brought into the mix of like, you go a couple rounds and then they rape you, or you're doing jujitsu and then they rape you, so yeah, that was a turn on for them for sure.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
It serves me, it served me. And
Yeah.
So I chose, now people are like, oh my gosh, like you can either choose to stay a victim or you can turn that shit into gold. And, that's what you have to do if you want to move on from being a victim. And I did not want to stay a victim because he wins if I stay a victim. So I took all of that experience and I'm like, guess what? I am one of the leading anti-sex trafficking specialists in the country. And he made me one of those. So thank you. Because of him, I was able to save and help countless people. So joke's on him.
Yeah, this is something I say quite often. And, some people who've never really had this kind of lifestyle, yours or mine lifestyles, they don't necessarily understand it, but there comes a point sometime that you don't have to ask why anymore, because you know the answer to that, even though that past that you had is dark and ugly and just, something we should never ever have to experience. What you're doing, what you've done to help other women, there's your why. Sometimes we have to experience all of this to be able to say to somebody, I understand. And then you can change their life. And it sounds like that's what you did.
Yeah. Hardships are just opportunities for perspective. And so
I'd rather you not have gone through that.
Totally, right? Me too.
I'd rather you not have gone through any of that, but I'm glad that that happened. I'm not glad that happened. I'm glad that because that happened, you were able to show that love to other women who were going through it.
Yeah, I'm super blessed. And I get that, a lot of people don't make it out. A lot of people don't have the strength to do the inner work. A lot of people don't have the resources to do the inner work. So what was meant for evil, hey, God meant for good, right? And unfortunately, it was a perfect storm of free will, dysfunctional choices, chaos. Because I played a role in this too. I made choices too. Yeah, it was out of place of naivety and trauma, but I got there all by myself, and so did he. And I think it's interesting to note that he had a history of sexual abuse as a child. So he was raped a bunch by older women in the tribe on a consistent basis. So he had choices to either stay a victim or to become an abuser. And that's what happens when you don't resolve trauma. You either stay, or when you don't have therapy and you don't resolve it, you either stay a victim or you become an abuser. And not to negate anything he did, but those were his two choices.
Yeah. Well, it's the fact that you can recognize that he grew up with trauma too, that's really amazing, because most people would just be like, I hope he dies and goes to hell. And you might even still be thinking that, but at least you can think somewhere in your heart that he had that trauma too.
That he has, people hear my story, oh my God, that's so horrible, or that's a horrible story. His story is the horrible story. He's still stuck in dysfunction. He'll never know true love. He'll never know peace and freedom. Right. God, that's horrible. That's horrific. I
Wow.
wouldn't want to live that life. I get to experience true love. I get to experience healing. So his story is actually the tragedy.
I love that. Wow. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. That is a perspective that we need to learn more inside of ourselves to see.
Mm.
Wow, that makes me emotional. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So before I get too emotional,
Sorry.
so that's awesome. And then so you started counseling and you brought yourself, well, you've had help with counseling and stuff,
Yeah.
but ultimately you brought yourself out of that.
Mhm.
Now where did you go from there? So I know you're a successful businesswoman right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did social work for about 10 years. I worked with that organization, built it up, took it international, wrote legislation, counseled government, worked with undercover, was a Florida gang specialist, all that good stuff. And then I worked with kids in the foster care system, getting them out of sex trafficking situations, because that's a big deal here in Florida. And then I quit about 2 years ago.
You just on to something next?
Yeah, I was always a writer. So this is another silver lining piece, is because I wasn't allowed to have an opinion or express anything or have a voice or only speak when spoken to. I wrote. I wrote like crazy this whole time. And so that really helped me develop my writing skills. And then when I started working for the nonprofits, I was writing. They saw I was a writer and they're like, oh, can you write this curriculum? Can you write this newsletter? Can you write our VIP emails? Can you handle our social media? So I started doing all that for about 10 years. So when I quit, just because I was done, I was severely burnt out. I was working for foster care. I had 2 miscarriages during that time, and it was just too much. It was just too much. And so I just started telling people that, hey, I can write your stuff for you. I can be your copywriter. And everybody knew I was a good writer already, so it wasn't a hard sell. And then that quickly accelerated into from just being a freelancer to running a content agency, which is what I do now.
That's amazing. So you're a copyright.
Yeah.
For my viewers who are not maybe completely familiar with that, I never really understood copyright until I think a year and a half ago. And I'm like, oh, okay. Can you explain what you do?
Yeah, we write everything that you see on the internet. So we write website copy, so all the words on a website, bios, one sheets, product descriptions, social media captions, and then we also create graphics to go along with that. And then we also offer strategy as well on how to execute it properly. So we don't want any codependent clients. We want you all to be empowered. So we literally teach you how to do everything. And then most people go, yeah, that's a lot of work. We still want you to do it. We go, okay. And we do it anyways.
Yeah, that's probably what I would end up doing. That's too much work. You do it for me, please. So are you, because of the world is so much smaller now with, Zoom and everything else in social media, you probably have clients all over the world. Like you don't have to be in Florida, right?
Yeah, no. I think 1 or 2 of my clients are here, and the rest I've never even met in person. Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised too. So I was like, oh, wow. Okay, thanks, guys.
So it's
Inquiry.
Inquiry. So sorry.
It's okay.
.co.com.
Yes, ma'am. Inquiryco.com.
Inquiryco.com for anybody who wants to go and see what you do, what you have to offer, and hopefully they'll find it too much work for them and hire you.
Yeah, get some of your time back. Quit doing these admin, menial tasks. You step into your power and let us take care of all that stuff for you.
It's the perfect world right now today with COVID. The last year, people are starting to realize that they have talents. They're taking these webinars and these courses and all this stuff they want to do, and they want to live out their dreams. And then they realize there's so much more work than I thought. I just want to live my dream. And then there comes Amanda. Okay.
Yep. Outsource. It's the only way to scale.
Let me do it so you can live out your dream. That's awesome. And then, so I'm going to have on the YouTube thing, I'll have your Instagram and your website and everything like that. But what I would like to know, 2 things I would like to know. First of all, have you found true love?
Yes. I am married to the most incredible man. Oh my God, I love him. So we've been together, I think, a total of 8 years. We're coming up on our second year of marriage, but we've been together, a long time now. So, and he knows everything. And he had a pretty hard learning curve, to understand trauma and how to deal with triggers and meltdowns. And we've experienced, and even being in a relationship after abuse is difficult, and you have to learn how to do that. And I have to learn how to love a man appropriately. And then, I just had a miscarriage 4 months ago. So it feels like I'm still like receiving the consequences of those actions along, that happened. So even walking through that, like, it's still a process. So he's been amazing. He is my rock. He is my steady. And he, keeps me anchored in a good way.
I love that. He's your partner.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 1000%.
Yeah. He's not like where you grew up.
Mm-mm.
Men are this and women are that. He's your partner in life. I love that. So you found good, true love. I'm so happy for that.
Yeah. Me too.
I ask this once in a while. I don't ask it very often because I find a lot of people ask it, but I really want to ask you because of what you've gone through. And, I have listeners of all different age groups, young girls, women. What advice do you have? Because especially girls nowadays, and it's every generation, they've got their spots where it's tough to be a girl, tough to be a female. But today, I think it's just so much worse with the social media and everything that's going on. And what's your advice for young girls? I'm not just talking about 13, young adults, even 20-year-old, your 20-year-old self, let's say. What's your advice for that strong, independent woman that you are? Because others can be strong, independent, no matter where they are.
Yeah. To not find yourself in an abusive relationship, my advice would be to have really strong boundaries and to know what those are before you enter into a relationship. And if at any point they ask you to violate those boundaries or those values, that is your exit right there. But get out right now, because anyone who loves you truly will not ask you to violate your boundaries. And that was some of the red flags I missed initially, was just the eroding away of my values. And then I found myself in this space. And then as far as being a strong, confident woman and how can you play a role in ending sex trafficking, I would say really support the men around you. And if you are healthy as a woman and you're making space for men in your life to have a healthy relationship with you, whether that's a brother, a friend, a coworker, a romantic relationship, if you're healthy and you create space for them to be healthy and vulnerable and safe, that's how we start eliminating this thing one by one. Because if we have healthy men, we don't have men seeking to violate other people.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. Thank you. I've heard a few people say things like that. Very, very, very few. Mostly it's always, and true enough, like yourself as the woman, like be pro-woman, be good to each other, don't tear women down. We rarely think of the men in these areas.
Yeah, these are broken men. A man buys a vulnerable man, woman, child because they're not getting their needs met in a healthy way. And they've set themselves up to violate somebody else. So if they are shown a healthy way and there's space created for them to be healthy and to play a healthy role in your world, they're not going to seek out to get their needs met in an unhealthy way.
Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time out being with us today. I love your story, and I love that you are a strong, independent, successful woman with such a heart. I don't even know you, and I can feel your heart and the intelligence that from this to here that meets together. I love that. So thank you for that. And I just want all my listeners and my viewers to see, listen, follow your dreams. There's always a way out. There's always going to be adversity in life. There's always going to be problems and troubles. But there's always a way out. Follow your dreams and listen. It gets tough sometimes to follow your dream. So we have inquiry.co. It's It's true, Amanda. I just love the fact that this business, the service exists. Like I don't know where I've been the last, no, I don't know, to know that this actually exists. There's people out there that can take that burden off your shoulders. And that's what you do.
Yep.
And you're seasoned at it. You've been
Yep.
doing it for a long while, so you're a professional.
Pretty
So-
damn good at it.
Yeah. Inkery,
Yes.
inquiry.co.com. Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate you. And let us know if new things come out. Let us know. We can help you promote it, hopefully. And
Will do.
to my listeners, thank you once again for tuning in. I truly appreciate you. And as I say all the time, make sure you share, subscribe, tweet, download, I don't know, send a pigeon. Make sure you tell everyone they should be listening to This Is Your City. Stay safe and stay blessed. Ciao. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.